Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of the Play-by-Play podcast, the daily wrestling podcast with me, your host, Atif Nawaz, and with me, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Arman Kirmani. How's it going?
I'm very, very happy today. Finally, we've seen a Monday Night Raw. Well, I still like to call it Monday Night Raw, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
That actually is built up to the Royal Rumble after a very slow start in January. And I was pretty disappointed with the way Raws were going, but I think we had a really good Raw last night.
Yeah, we did indeed. We're going to be talking all about Monday Night Raw. Our big topic today is going to be Brock Lesnar. We're going to be talking about what he did on last night's Raw. Did he turn face? Was that a face turn? We're going to talk about that in more detail.
Well, I'm convinced it is a face turn.
Yeah.
I know you have your doubts.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in more detail. And of course, we're also going to talk about everything else that happened on Raw, some of the awkward bookings, specifically involving the Intercontinental Championship and Daniel Bryan's loss on his comeback match on Raw. We'll talk about that as well. Also, we had a fan question about Yokozuna, so we'll talk about Yokozuna a little bit. And I'll remind everybody, thank you so much to everybody who's joining us on all these podcasts. Remember, you can tweet us at PlayByPlay123, and you can email us questions at PlayByPlay123.co.uk. Also want to thank our wonderful partner, eWrestlingNews.com. You can find all of our articles, all of our podcasts on eWrestlingNews.com, and a whole host of other wonderful news that's been aggregated from around the wrestling community. So here we are. Let's kick off the show. Monday Night Raw was, you think it was a really good Raw last night as compared to previous ones?
Well, firstly, the opening segment was really good. The final segment, could have been performed better, I suppose, but still, I can't complain going into sort of a pay-per-view this coming Sunday at the Rumble. But I thought it was a really good opening with Brock confronting Rollins and Cena coming out, and I think it really was an extended segment and probably dragged on a bit too long. But at the end of the day, that is the main event at the Rumble. So
what I didn't like about that segment? It was fine. There was nothing too wrong with it. It's not a major gripe. But Rollins was on the Tron, and it just felt like he was waiting there to deliver his lines. I mean, if they had that original dynamic, when you got three people and you've got to separate them in the space, you have one in the ring, one just outside the ring, and one at the top of the near the Tron, right? But they had Rollins on the big screen, the big face, and he's talking down to Cena. He looks like the Wizard of Oz.
And he botched his promo as well, with Cena picked up on. In fact, there were a lot of botches on promos yesterday.
There were,
which was interesting. But at the end of the day, I'm not complaining. I genuinely think that Brock turned, and I said this in the previous episode of our podcast. I said that I don't like the dynamic where you've got when we had Rollins confronting Heyman.
Yeah.
I said you're going to start sympathizing with one, and lo and behold, we've now got a much bigger confrontation between two heel characters, which effectively I'm pretty sure has meant that Brock is now a face, especially with the last segment where he comes in and basically destroys the Authority's henchmen.
The Big Show and Kane.
Big Show and Kane. Rollins made a good escape, but clearly they don't want to show contact.
He legged it, didn't he? He really sold Brock as a beast, and that was really, I'd really like that.
There's
Rollins.
also a segment mid-show where where Brock confronts him, and he really sells it, which was really good as well. So, So they are making
breathes heavily
the beast. But I guess the question I want to ask you is, assuming what I'm saying is right. I mean, I know the WWE are putting everyone in the middle. These days, they're not making clear distinctions between heels and faces, predominantly because the wrestling audience are picking who they want to cheer and boo.
Yep.
And they're struggling to hide it. But let's assume that Brock goes into the Rumble as a full face. What implications does that have for the 30-man over the top? Well,
if I assume, and I've got to confess, I'm not completely sold on Brock being a heel yet. I've got to tell you that straight off the bat. A face yet, sorry. I mean, Brock is he's always been a badass heel, right? He's always been the big, strong guy, and the hardcore fans love him. He still gets a pop for his music every time from the older fans who know all about his UFC and all about his real fighting credibility. So I'm not convinced. I understand he's got this little mini dynamic going on with Rollins. I just think that's teasing us to a finish where Rollins ends up walking away with the championship, probably in a cowardly fashion. So I see Brock Lesnar. I see Brock Lesnar winning that match at Royal Rumble, but then having an immediate Money in the Bank cash-in done on him by Seth Rollins, who walks away with the belt, and then you set up like a mini feud between them up until Fastlane. If we've got a face Brock now going into WrestleMania without the championship, you have to assume that means you're going to have. I mean, the Rumble is still open.
Well, let me slow you down. There's a lot of interesting things you're saying there. But let's assume that Brock wins the match, and then Rollins cashes in and leaves with the title.
Yeah.
Brock will still have quite a lot of, popularity, and I still think he'll remain a face, according to what I'm sort of observing at the moment. And clearly, if Rollins pins him, you will have sympathy because you'll feel Brock undeservedly loses the title. That almost indicates that we're going to have some sort of outside interference that's going to cost Brock the match. So can we predict that there may be a big heel returning to cost Brock a match leading up to a match at Mania?
Well, who's left? There's only, there's no massive big heels out there. I mean, Sheamus could come back as a heel. We've talked about Randy Orton. He could come back as a heel.
Batista
as a heel, I think is unlikely because he's in a weird position, Batista, because he's a big box office success. Everybody likes him. I don't know about the hardcore wrestling fans, but you just never know who you're going to get at these wrestling events anymore. As you say, you might get the hardcores who want to boo some of the in-your-face faces, if you'll allow me that liberty. So, I mean, it's impossible to say. Well, what I would say is I think we're maybe still on for that three-way at WrestleMania between the Shield members, because I can see that. See, Roman Reigns was positioned really strongly last night. For the title.
Well,
sure.
I mean, it could happen, but I like to think that the WWE over recent years have made the main event quite pure and traditional, with a one-on-one, limited outside interference. I'm not
apart
sure
from last year where they had a triple threat match.
Yeah, apart from obviously last year. I mean, but then they did have the one-on-one with Triple H at the beginning as well, so it was in 2 stages.
Sure.
I'm not convinced they'll go for a triple threat main event for the title, and
that sells. Don't you think that sells? Wouldn't you be interested in seeing the Shield, who were the hottest group of the last several years, right? They've got they built this huge. They got a huge push. They built a huge fan base. They sold a lot of merchandise, and now the 3 of them have got distinct characters, whether they've been well or poorly.
I would have been sold on it a lot more if we'd had a very strong Roman Reigns and a very strong Ambrose. But the booking,
it was better yesterday. They were both better yesterday.
They were, but 1 week doesn't convince me that they are main eventers. I think if that was the way they were going, it really was a shoddy job at booking, and they'll really struggle to sell their.
Who would you book in the main event? If you've got to face Brock now, right? You've got to face Brock in the mix. Who wins the Rumble for you?
I'm not sure. It might be a surprise entrant that's coming back with a heel.
So let me ask you, that segment they did with like Hogan, Michaels, and Flair, where they made them each predict a thing. Now, usually when they make kind of predictions like that, that kind of excludes these guys from a list of who might win. And obviously they didn't mention Reigns, and then Reigns came out to cap off the segment, which makes you think that's the direction they're going to go in. They're going to go with Roman Reigns, and to Reigns' credit, he gave probably the best promo of his life without saying anything, which tells you a little bit how you need to book this geezer. But I'm not sure. I'm still not convinced that. I'm not convinced that's the way to go. I still think Bryan's the most popular. I don't understand why they booked him to lose his first match back on Raw. I understand they want to keep Bray Wyatt strong. Perhaps that's what they're keeping him strong for, a Rumble victory.
So it looks like there's 2 main contenders here right now, Reigns and Wyatt, according to what you're saying.
Yeah, well, that's what last night's Raw indicates to me. So Reigns looked very strong at the end of that promo. Wyatt got a win over the most popular wrestler in the company yesterday, and a relatively clean win. I know there's a little bit of interference.
I can't see Brock Wyatt, and I can't see Cena Wyatt.
Yeah, nor can I. And I can't see Brock Cena again unless Cena turns, and Cena's not going to turn because he just released a new T-shirt and he's got to sell some merchandise.
That could be a swerve.
With the new T-shirt.
Yeah. Well, I was saying he'll still sell the T-shirts leading into
WrestleMania. Well, when would he turn? If it was going to be Brock Cena again, with Cena as the heel, when would he turn?
Cena could turn at Fastlane.
I don't know. I don't see it. I think
there is that tag match that's lined up, isn't there?
It would be out of the. It wouldn't. I don't know. Usually WWE are quite good at building major star moments. So if he didn't turn for The Rock, I don't see him turning for Brock.
The fact of the matter is that this is possibly the worst year that Cena's had in terms of main eventing, and I think maybe to get him back some of the popularity. I mean, they really did go at him yesterday with the WWE app vote and suggesting that the fans had lost complete confidence in him. And
85% of them sort of did.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if that's what it implies.
Well, there's 2 ways to look at why they would vote like that. One, because they don't want him in the main event, which was teased by Triple H and the interviewer yesterday, Renee Young, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the other side is they had confidence that he'll overcome the odds and go on to win and get the job. I mean, so you can look at it both ways.
Do you think that vote was legit?
That's an interesting question. think that the WWE have a lot to lose if they start to fix these votes and
Well, how would anyone know?
Well, I think that the fact is that there's always sort of people that can leak information out backstage, and with being a public company, and let's not forget that there are sponsors and stuff involved. So to lose credibility, I think it would be a big risk.
I don't know. I think it wouldn't be the first time they did something like that to forward a storyline.
No, and
hey, don't forget Roman Reigns won the Slammy for Best Superstar, which a lot of people are kind of still shaking their heads about.
Well, I think that's different. I think that's different when. I'm not sure. I don't really want to get into whether or not the credibility was. I'm just going to accept it because we start to get into this murky territory of answers.
Did you vote? Did you use the app? Did you vote?
I didn't. I was fixing a table while watching. So
nor did I actually. I must confess. The reason I didn't vote is because I didn't see it as a consequence. Those three wrestlers were obviously going to come back in some form or fashion before the Royal Rumble, right? Obviously, you're going to have Ryback, you're going to have Luke Harper, you're going to have Dolph Ziggler. They're obviously going to be in the mix. But I like the way they tried to inject some interest in there. They tried to engage the younger demographic with the voting and everything. I don't think the 85% vote to make Cena compete at the risk of losing his title shot was necessarily a vote of no confidence from the fans. I don't think that's what it is. I think they just kind of played along. I think most fans just played along with the story, that they fulfilled the role they were expected to play.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think I've got to give credit to the writers for once. I quite like the fact that I have no idea who's going to win the Rumble at the moment.
Well, you kind of do.
Well, we'll see. I still think that it could be a surprise entrant coming tomorrow, doing a turn. I'm not sure who that would be off the top of my head because that's the nature of what a surprise should be.
Yeah.
So I'm quite happy about that.
Who would you book to win the Royal Rumble? Last note on this.
I guess it all depends on who's the champion going in. So if you give me three different
scenarios. Okay, fine. So John Cena walks out world champion. Who would you like to see to win the Royal Rumble?
Taker.
Okay, all right.
Well, it's my imagination, right?
Sure.
I don't need to be as
fair enough.
I'd like to
okay,
see.
but let's try and stay within the realms of realism.
But
it's not impossible.
But how amazing would it be?
I'll give you Taker. Just don't come back with Giant Gonzalez. Okay, so all right. Seth Rollins wins the world title. Who do you want to see win the Rumble?
Daniel Bryan.
Okay, that's interesting. And if, of course, Brock Lesnar walks out with the belt,
maybe Taker again. That would be good. Maybe that would be good
for the world title. Taker, Brock for the world title.
Maybe
rematch.
The Rock.
Maybe The Rock?
Maybe The Rock.
You're going for a surprise entrance?
Rock.
That was the original plan.
Well, yeah, I'm really not sure who it could be. I mean, what I'm really worried about is them bringing back Orton to win the Rumble.
And it's possible.
That's not something I really want to see, to be honest.
I don't know that many people that do want to see that, but we can't rule it out as a possibility. I certainly see him making his return at the Rumble, and Sheamus as well. I reckon Sheamus will also be at the Rumble as well. So there's two surprise entrants to look out for. If you're asking me if Rollins wins the title, as I expect, then I wouldn't mind. I'm not a great fan of this, but I wouldn't mind seeing Roman Reigns win the Royal Rumble, especially if they're planning a three-way with Reigns, Ambrose, and Rollins in the main event of WrestleMania. What a way to make three massive stars instantly. I think that's a great idea. If Brock walks out the champion, then I'd like to see Daniel Bryan win as used, because I think Brock, I know you're not a fan of Brock Bryan, but I think it could be an exciting match akin to Bret Hart Yokozuna.
I definitely don't want to watch Brock Bryan, that's for sure.
I know you wrote a whole column about it on Wrestling News, so check that out, guys.
Just check it out, comment. I'm getting so much abuse. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's so well deserved as well. Anyway, so let's move on anyway. So it was an interesting rule. One other thing, we're talking about Bryan, so very quickly. Bryan losing relatively clean to Bray Wyatt, panned almost universally on Twitter yesterday. How do you feel about it? I feel like you might have an interesting opinion on this.
Well, I don't really care, to be honest. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want him to win the Rumble, so it's an indication that he's not going to be winning the Rumble. But it doesn't mean much. It's only one loss after 2 matches.
Big comeback match on Raw. The most popular face loses. Does that make sense?
Yes, if they want to keep it a surprise that he's actually going to win. So
wow, I don't know. Maybe they're just enraging the fans.
I really don't think it damages his credibility going into the Rumble. He's a big enough name to overcome one sort of loss.
Is Kane the most irritating person on television right now?
Definitely. I just cannot take that guy seriously since I never took him seriously when he took off his mask, and now that he's changed his gimmick completely to be corporate Kane, it's just something I don't even want to. I don't even want to repeat that term again.
I saw a hilarious tweet on Twitter last night during during Raw, which said something like, "Oh, he's just Glenn from Human Resources at this point," which I thought was very funny. I don't remember who tweeted it out, but thanks, by the way, to everybody that engaged with us while we were live tweeting Raw last night. I will agree, it was a fun show. It felt like more was going on. I enjoyed parts of it. I guess we have to talk a little bit about the angle with the legends. Okay, so we had the NWO. We had a surprise appearance from the New Age Outlaws, the APA, the Acolyte Protection Agency. And JBL looked so much fitter than everybody else in the ring. It was hilarious, including the Ascension. But do you think that was the right payoff to the Ascension?
Well, I said to you in the podcast yesterday that I can't see the Ascension going over these guys. I know they'd get a battering. And
well, I suspected they might batter the New Age Outlaws, but it ended up going the other way around.
Well, I said that I was.
What does that achieve?
Just the fact that they are not legend killers. They have to work their way up the division.
Well, I mean, it feels a bit pointless, really, because I mean, it was a nice moment. I think we all enjoyed that moment. It was very nice. He had X-Pac there, who kind of, I don't know why they called him X-Pac, because when he was in the NWO, he was 6, or we just call him Sean Waltman, or the one to do. X-Pac didn't make sense for me anyway. I also enjoyed the comment in the backstage segment where Kevin Nash, and I tweeted this out yesterday as well, Kevin Nash says to Triple H, "What the hell kind of show you run in here?" It's nice how art imitates life sometimes.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Do
you think that was a knowing dig at themselves?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was actually funny because Triple H almost broke character in that moment.
I'm so ashamed, he said.
He said, "I'm so ashamed," and in his face.
Is that a jab at McMahon?
I think it's a jab at themselves because they realize just how the product has changed and how nonsensical it is at times.
At times, okay, fair enough. All right, let's move on then. So we've talked a little bit about Brock turning face potentially, whether or not he did. And guys, make sure you chime in on that. Do you think Brock is now a face? Make sure you tweet us at PlayByPlay123, and remember to send us any questions. Send any questions our way that you want to. Questions at playbyplay123.co.uk. And one of the questions came from one of our listeners last night. Thank you so much for sending this in. They asked about Yokozuna and potentially Yokozuna Rodney Anoya, who passed away several years ago. If you don't know him, you should find out more about Yokozuna on the WWE Network, one of the greatest big men in the business, headlined 2 WrestleManias in a row, 9 and 10. Was he the greatest big man ever?
I think, when you say greatest, you might be, splitting that into lots of different variables. But I think in the new generation era, he was the greatest heel for sure. And he was probably the scariest for children at the time when I was a child. And I was genuinely scared of what might happen to my heroes like Bret Hart if he landed even a leg drop on them, let alone the bonsai drop, which was his finisher, which was genuinely lethal. I think he was definitely one of the best wrestlers of that size, and his storytelling all depended on his size. He wasn't trying to do drop kicks at that weight. Do you know what I mean?
But he had some great athleticism for a big man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the weight was always a big part of the storytelling in all his matches, including the match at WrestleMania 10, where he loses balance on the top of the ring and Bret, ends up pinning him, which was good because Bret wins, and yet we don't really feel like Yokozuna has lost too much credibility apart from he's a bit dopey, which is what I suppose we felt. But Yoko is an absolutely tremendous performer, one of my favorite all-time wrestlers, and I think if you go back to countries like Pakistan, sometimes which is where I'm from, actually the legacy is shown of Yokozuna's legacy is shown because if you see somebody who's overweight, children refer to him as Yokozuna. So, that is one of the... and parents,
stood out.
No, children probably not now because it wasn't their generation, but it definitely when we were children.
Sure.
To make fun of people, which you should never do, but the reality is that's what people were referring to.
That's funny.
And that just shows the reach of wrestling.
Of wrestling, but it's big in the subcontinent. And in the subcontinent, especially in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, these kind of things really stand out. The big guys. And in Pakistan, there's a huge kind of a myth around the great Khali, and obviously there is in India as well because he is Indian, but there's a huge thing about, my God, look at the size of this man, that spectacle. And often like sort of Western wrestling fans like ourselves will be like, well, this guy can't work, he's got bad knees, he can't even walk in a straight line, what's he doing on TV, what's he doing in a wrestling ring, what on earth is he doing with the World Heavyweight Championship? Well, that physical factor, that visual, is quite impressive to markets that we don't even consider sometimes. But yeah, just to come back to Yokozuna, I mean, I thought one of the more interesting parts of his career came later when he turned face. And I don't know if you remember, but he did a promo in English.
Where he all of a sudden said, Yeah, I was always told by Mr. Fuji not to speak in English. I think that's what it
Yeah,
was.
and they kind of they were quite smart about the way they disguised it because he's obviously Samoan, but they kind of build him as like this Japanese, but they didn't build him as Japanese. They build him as being from Polynesia, which is a really smart way of getting over the fact that he's without misguiding the entrance. It wasn't like an Undertaker Death Valley job.
Although I'm pretty sure Mr. Fuji used to come out with a Japanese flag.
He did. He came out with it, so he's representing Japan. Yeah. But he was always built from Polynesia.
Yeah.
So that's what he was announced at. Or was he announced from Japan? I don't think he was announced from Japan.
I think it was Polynesia.
Yeah, it was Polynesia. But yeah, I mean, he was a great worker, and he played his part in so many matches, and he was willing to twist himself into positions. I mean, that match with Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9, that unforgettable spot where Bret puts him in the sharpshooter,
Mr. Fuji with the salt.
With the salt. I mean, it's such an iconic moment.
And then the very forgettable ending with Hogan coming down.
Oh, God. Oh, dear, oh, dear. I tell you what, since we've still got some time, so we can talk a little bit more about the legends last night, because we didn't give that as much time as we probably should have. Now, of all of the legends that were on the show, right, because there were a whole bunch of them, whose role do you think was most useful?
Can I say useless?
Oh, we can do useless and useful. Sure, let's start with useless. Why not?
Ric Flair. I never understand why he comes on these panels.
You just don't like Ric Flair.
Obnoxious. No, well, it's not that I don't like him. I just find that he needs to, act like a legend now.
Well, he did it short and sweet and to the point.
Well,
it was, I like the guys who walk on the wild side. My pick is Dean Ambrose.
I just don't. I mean, what I didn't understand about that segment was he actually started to hate the Big Show first.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, what the hell were you expecting when you started to give him chops in the middle of the ring, and neither Hogan nor Michaels wanted any part of that?
Yeah.
And then you get knocked out, which is pretty much fair enough if you start chopping the guy.
Well, if we talk about the weird dynamics between them, did you like that segment between that little exchange between Shawn Michaels and Hogan, where they teased a little bit and then Michaels kind of weasels out? I didn't like that at all.
Well, what was very interesting is if you go back and watch that segment, Michaels comes into the ring and hugs Flair, but doesn't even shake hands with
did he not?
Hogan. No. And then they have the banter and the exchange where Michaels, as always, makes fun of Hogan or patronizes him. And you can actually have a look at Hogan's facial expression. His poker face stares at him blankly and gives a very sort of cold response that passes off as being humorous because he's a true pro. But there's definitely heat between the guys. But I felt Hogan was in the dynamic between the two is always, I mean, Michael's got the biggest pop. I think it was noticeable that Hogan got the probably the least pop yesterday out of all the legends.
Well, it's the law of diminishing returns, isn't it?
Well,
yeah, he's just there all the time.
He's there all the time, but he really, I mean, even Flair got a bigger pop. Even the New Age Outlaws were getting a bigger pop. Even Ron Simmons got a bigger pop. I mean, that's pretty.
That was a very cool moment when Ron Simmons came out.
It was.
But I have to say though, I wasn't convinced that all the fans last night in Dallas, Texas, knew enough about those superstars. I think there has been a very notable change in generation, because even when Scott Hall did the survey, I know fans are a bit out of touch, but they didn't respond with the NWO line immediately. Even he was shaken by, he said, "Thanks for playing," instead of his catchphrase, which is "one more for the good guys." I make that one more for the good guys. So there's a general shift, and it's quite telling, really, that the fans have kind of steered clear of this NWO brand.
Well, I'm not surprised by that at all. You don't come into WWE audiences and start talking about NWO stuff.
Well, hardcore fans of our age and older will remember the value of the NWO.
I appreciate that, but hardcore fans are not going to be in Dallas, Texas necessarily for a Raw reunion show. It's going to be children, it's going to be women, and for those that are there, they will always remember Scott Hall as Razor Ramon. And believe me, if he came as a Razor gimmick or made reference to and came out and said, "Oh, Chico," like he used to, he would have got a much bigger pop than he did.
We talked about being the bad guy and everything. I'm not sure. I mean, I still think Scott Hall in WCW as a member of the NWO was a star, a huge star, and fans. I think I see it more as a way of people not engaging with WWE Network, because on the network they've been pushing that Monday Night War series, which is a fantastic series, by the way. So if you've not seen it, I strongly recommend it. Some of the episodes get a bit samey, but in general, you get something new every time and a new perspective, and it's just a wonderful insight into one of the most exciting times in wrestling of ever, really, and probably will never be repeated. So it's so exciting, and they put so much marketing and effort behind rebuilding the brand. They released a couple more NWO DVDs. There was NWO Back in Black, NWO Volume 2. They tried to highlight them, but there is definitely a disconnect with fans. Maybe it was just Dallas last night, but I don't think fans have picked up on, or they've just not been engaging with the network in the numbers that WWE.
Well, quite possibly.
In America, at least.
Well, quite possibly. I don't think it's that much of a catastrophe.
Because you wouldn't doubt, right, if they did that same thing in London, for example. If you're an NWO reunion in London, people are going to go, hey.
Yeah, but London, we get a lot of information through secondhand sources, and we don't get as much live exposure. So for us, history, memories, legacies, they mean a hell of a lot more than they do in sort of towns where they regularly see live events and stuff. So I just I'm not to devalue and go back to the debate of the significance of the NWO, because they will get inducted into the Hall of Fame at the end of the day, and deservedly so, because they definitely were integral in changing the business and bringing in the Attitude Era even into WWE. But I don't think you come into WWE rings and start doing NWO gimmicks.
Okay, well, that's your opinion, and you will stand by it. Before we go, let's sort out the question of the day and the match of the day. Now, yesterday, I posed the question. Okay, I don't know if do you remember my question from yesterday?
I'd let you repeat it.
Okay, I talked about the big famous match between NWO leader at the time, Hulk Hogan, and Sting.
I remember it was the guy who won the championship for just over a week.
In between. So that whole year, Hogan held the belt for like God knows how long, but there was a little break for a week where he lost the title at the Road Wild, or it might have been Hog Wild actually. I think it was Road Wild pay-per-view in 1997. And the question was, who did he lose it to? Who held that championship for over a week? Do you know the answer?
No, I'm not sure. Was it DDP?
No, it was Lex Luger, the total package Lex Luger. He made Hogan submit to the torture rack, which made me think, wow, this guy's got stock in this company, because they really put Luger over. So a very, very well done to Abbas, who tweeted us yesterday. Abbas, well done to you. You are correct, sir, and well done on your WCW knowledge in a time where very few people have any. Before you give your question of the day, may I do my match of the day?
You can.
So you can have a little think about that. I'll tell you my match of the day, because I've been thinking a lot about Yokozuna recently. We've been talking about Yokozuna today, and I want to recommend a Yokozuna match to you. This will be the second one I recommend with Yokozuna. But when Yokozuna was tagging with Owen Hart, there was a time where they were World Tag Team Champions, and they were supposed to defend the titles at a pay-per-view against Shawn Michaels and Diesel, right? But what happened was Owen Hart was supposedly had to be home with his family because of an emergency. His wife was giving birth, according to the storyline, and British Bulldog took his place. So the match was ostensibly Yokozuna and the British Bulldog versus Diesel and Shawn Michaels. But there is a little appearance from Owen Hart in there as well. And you can find this on the WWE Network. It's a very interesting thing. I believe it was In Your House 3? 4. Was it In Your House 4? In Your House 4. So there we go.
Do you know why I know it was In Your House 4?
Why?
Because guess what match I watched this afternoon?
You watched that exact match, did you?
That was going to be my match of the day for tomorrow. You've ruined it.
I've ruined it. I've taken it away from you.
I can't believe that. That was a great match.
Well, what's your question? Dean Douglas Award of the day.
My question is the following. Who has the most time as a competitor in the Rumble without being eliminated?
Who has the most time?
Yeah, across all the years.
Oh, they actually revealed this in that video package yesterday, didn't they?
I believe so.
On Raw. Yeah, that's interesting, because they've never done that before.
Yeah.
They've never done it. The first time. That video package that promoted the Rumble was actually quite... I always like those, because they update them every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so there's your question. Who has the most time in the Royal Rumble? Not the most eliminations, not the most wins or anything like that. Just the most time spent in the ring in the Royal Rumble. Get that answer in quickly, so you can be the Dean Douglas of the award winner of the day tomorrow. And that is a wrap from us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been fun. It's been exciting. We're going to be back tomorrow as well. Make sure you send in those tweets at playbyplay123, emails at questions@playbyplay123.co.uk. Join our Facebook page, Play by Play Wrestling, or facebook.com/playbyplaywrestling. Any parting words, Arman?
I'm really looking forward to the Rumble this week. So tomorrow's episode, I think we're going to focus a little bit more on some predictions and who we think might actually have a chance. I'm looking forward to that, because I actually genuinely have no idea this year, based on the last Raw, which was yesterday.
Well, there you go. Something to look forward to tomorrow. But until then, everybody, we shall say ciao.
And reset for the Rumble.